Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On Air. An interesting one today. We're going to talk about a new topic, something we've not discussed on this show before. But before I get into topic, I'm going to introduce my guest. My guest is Chris Loveridge. He's the account director for retail and wholesale at SAP. First and foremost, Chris, hello, how are you?
Very well. Thanks for having me on, Owen.
Pleasure. Really looking forward to this. Really excited about I'm actually genuinely looking forward to this topic. I think we're going to have fun with it. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about leveraging the team around you in enterprise through a sales process, but also navigating the politics within enterprise, which I think is quite a juicy topic. I'm looking forward to discussing that, the do's and the don'ts of navigating that politics. Before we get into topic though, we always give our guests 2 minutes just to let the audience know who Chris, sounds a bit silly, who are SAP, but look, give some context in case people don't know, if you wouldn't mind.
Perfect. Yep. So as Owen mentioned, my name's Chris Loveridge. I actually started my career out in recruitment, which gave me a really good grounding in sales before moving to a company called Experian. Many of you might know them from the credit score, but I was working more on the data quality side. And then 3.5 years ago, I was fortunate enough to move to SAP. Many of you may know SAP as kind of finance, accounting, and ERP. But I was working in the customer experience space, which is essentially all of the front office applications from e-commerce, marketing, and things like that. So I thought the topics of teams and politics was great. SAP have over 100,000 employees worldwide. They're a huge organization which has some really, really great benefits, but also some fun along the way as well. So keen to talk about that today.
Do you know what? I thank you first and foremost. I'm on a recording day today, so I've got a few podcasts to record, and the person I've just spoken to before this was talking about the number of people involved in a buying committee, and here's a great example of an enterprise business. I dread to think how many people would be involved in a big buying decision, and I think it's a great example of the sorts of politics you'll no doubt navigating when you reverse that and you're trying to sell and you're trying to get a new customer on board. So let's talk about the positive bit, because you touched on the leveraging the team around you in the sales process.
Yeah.
Maybe let's dive into that a bit before we get into the politics. What does that mean? What are you doing in a typical sales process across enterprise, and who are you working with across that?
So the first thing to think about is when a customer buys SAP, that is a true strategic decision. It's heavy technology. It really is kind of enterprise grade. A lot of businesses run on SAP. There's a stat that 77% of the world transactions go through an SAP system. So it really is kind of the lifeblood. So that means that it's quite a big organizational decision, both on the customer side as well as the SAP side as well. So I remember a deal that we won last year, and I think we probably had about 50 people on the team at SAP, all contributing in various different ways. And that is a huge benefit of working with an organization like SAP. The resources are awesome. So it ranges from your sales management, sales leadership, exec sponsors, that kind of stuff, right the way through to some really in-depth kind of pre-sales engineers, product experts, as well as the go-to-market team with the latest kind of strategies. We've got competitive analysis teams in there as well as a group of people called industry value engineers, who are essentially taking that kind of functional requirement and turning it into a kind of a business benefit. So that translation piece from software to actually what it's going to deliver for the customer. So there's a whole host of people that they're to support. You're talking big bucks in terms of the opportunity. So they're throwing quite a lot of resources at it. And that's kind of mirrored on the customer side as well. If you think about the buying cycle there, you've got the end users, you've got the IT department, you've got business stakeholders, the CFO, and ultimately in the larger transactions, it tends to be because of significant change within that organization. So whether it be acquisitions, whether that be kind of growth into new markets, kind of that stuff as well. So often alignment with the CEO is taking place as well. So it's a long sales cycle. It's complex. It's ultimately highly competitive, as most things are, but that's why there's so many people on hand to support.
It fascinates me as somebody who's only ever worked in SME. by
Yeah.
choice, because that's what suits me. I think I'd be unemployable in enterprise, to be quite frank. But nonetheless, it honestly, it fascinates me. I'm baffled by that. And I guess my question is, who on earth is accountable in that process? Like, who's accountable for the end result?
So it very much lies on the account director's head. You're almost playing quarterback, as many people have told me before. It's ultimately you that's got to hit the target. So I often find you do as much selling internally as you do externally. So you want the A players on the team. So way before the opportunity arises, it's about networking. It's about building relationships, doing the odd favor here and there, understanding the process, which is quite painful sometimes. So how do I get assigned certain resources? How do I get people to come and support me? Because obviously I'm one of many, and that's really the trick. Really, is who you know internally, being able to navigate a whole ream of different teams, understanding all of the different slogans and titles that people have to bring together a core group of people that you think are going to add value to the customer and ultimately the opportunity.
So you've got over 50 people involved.
Yeah.
How on earth do you stay on top of that? Because you've probably got just as many stakeholders, maybe not just as many, but you've got a lot of stakeholders to relationship manage.
Yeah.
In the buyers organization as well. How on earth do you stay across that?
So I think the main thing is having a core team. So where I've got 50 people that may have contributed to the opportunity, but you'd have a core team of maybe like an industry pre-sales that are kind of evangelizing over what some of the market topics, a lead kind of architect as well, and then you'd have your kind of like your core sales functions. And within that, you'd have kind of weekly meetings, weekly syncs, kind of war rooms where you're kind of deciding on the sales strategy, the next steps, and all of that kind of good stuff. And from there, we'd then pivot out. As you can imagine, there's a lot of information that's flying about. So it's about having kind of a clear project structure in a way. So we use MS Teams and stuff. So we'd always create a group and kind of share content in there. And then you'd have maybe someone from the bid team that would overarching manage all of that content to put it into a readable format. So I guess it's having a core team, but knowing who to ask when you need certain things contributing to certain stages of the cycle.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you've got people working really closely on you with you, and then you're pulling people in. It's fascinating, isn't it? Because I think when you think about the size of the deal and the amount of money that's invested in trying to win that deal with no guarantees of that coming over, it's a big old gamble. And whilst I appreciate it's all relative to the size of an SAP or an Experian, whoever it might be, there's a lot of focus. I guess that must feel pretty hard when a deal goes down halfway through the process.
Exactly. When you're asking for up to 50 people, you need to have some pretty compelling reasons as to why you'd win. So yeah, it's one of those ones where there's a balancing act. If you can see that there is an end result, then absolutely the resources are available. But that's where the qualification process is quite strict.
Yeah, really interesting. So you've got to get in, you've got to qualify them before you get to that point, and you've got to be able to, I guess, look your colleagues in the eye and know that there's a certain amount of credibility behind this deal.
Absolutely. When I first joined SAP, I was a bit overwhelmed by the size of the organization, the various different systems, processes that you had to go through. But you quickly learn that if you start wasting time of people, they don't come back for seconds. So you have to really qualify, and you almost feel a little bit guilty because people become as invested as you are as the AE, and obviously you get the financial reward at the end of it, but they do it out of the pleasure and doing their job. So you almost want to bring people together and actually think, yeah, we're all invested in this. We can all see an end result. We all can see a win here. So let's do that. And that's probably another good point in having such a broader team, is that sometimes, myself included, as a sales guy, I can get happy ears and I can think, yep, actually what they're saying is they need this solution. This is great. When someone a little bit more pragmatic might say, no, actually, that's not quite what they said. You need to kind of hone in and double down on that. So it is useful.
Yeah, glass half full is great a lot of the time, isn't it? But not always in sales, the old glass half full forecast.
Exactly, absolutely. And you've got people mirrored their side, so they would have an enterprise architect that speak a completely different language to myself. So it's always good to get those people aligned, and you start to feel that you're winning when the dialogue starts happening between individuals like that, and you're kind of just letting that be and bringing together the information.
Yeah, okay. And let's just, I I guess keen to understand how much time, energy, effort you put into those internal relationships, because of course your role ultimately is to get an external third party to come and use your software, use your products, whatever it is. But yeah, it sounds like a big chunk of your role is inwardly facing, and I'm just keen to understand that split, and then how do you do that well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'd say it's probably about 50%. So whereas in some of the smaller organizations, I may have had 100 accounts to work with, and then maybe you had one product to sell and you could go out and it's kind of a small repeatable proposition. SAP has a huge portfolio of products, so there's experts in different domains. So I think first of all, you have a smaller territory. I had about 10 or so accounts, and they're going to be large transactions that you do. So the first part of my job really was to build my network, and I would spend probably the first 3 months really understanding them, understanding the kind of the drivers that they have, building those relationships, knowing that that's going to be more fruitful for me moving forward. So it's a huge part of the role, and you have to continually do that. It was way easier pre-lockdown, and I was fortunate to have at least 9 months in role before we went into lockdown, the old coffee chats, and SAP are pretty good at kind of creating those events where you get to know people, and that's obviously a huge win because they know one SAP is the token there.
Yeah, really interesting. Do you know what? I don't like getting into going off topic too much, but you've touched on something there that I have to raise around that in-person experience and the effect it has, because a lot of people go, it's okay working from home, we can be remote, we can do our jobs well. Do you know what? That's a great example of where it becomes ineffective without it.
Yeah, absolutely. I found the kind of everyone collaborating was quite difficult because everyone had slightly different ideas, teams, people kind of sort of talking over each other. There was nothing better than getting around the boardroom with a whiteboard and kind of drawing that out. So I think we did suffer a little bit from that. We actually used a tool in the end called Mural, which is quite cool. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It is almost like a virtual whiteboard, which did help, but you really need a strong spokesperson to kind of lead it and actually keep everyone on task.
Yeah, really interesting. So let's dive into that term that we used earlier, the politics. For somebody that's not, I mean, look, every organization has some level of politics, of course they do, but somebody sat in a 30-person SME right now or a startup, they won't necessarily understand what that means, and maybe some examples of the types of politics you see. Now, I will just caveat this by saying, naturally, you're not going to throw anyone under the bus. We can't give names, we can't give specifics, but maybe you could give us some examples of the types of politics you have to navigate in an enterprise sales process.
Yeah, so various different things really. So first of all, maybe around gaining resources. So you would have to have kind of like an exec sponsor internally and actually get them to prioritize your deal. If you imagine there's probably another 50, 60 of me within the UK fighting for similar resources, you have to kind of play the game and really ham up your opportunity to get that on board. Maybe pull in a little bit of a favor. There's a bit few IOUs. There might be something else going on in terms of another deal that particular line of business is going to get recognized on. So it is about who you know to get your A team on board. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is really around the management of the construct of the deal. So if you're thinking we're talking about large enterprise global deals, there's a lot of rigor around the process and to make sure SAP are going to make revenue on the deal and actually that it's going to be commercially viable. So there's politics, and you have to have a really strong kind of commercial lead to help you navigate through all of the different loopholes and different processes and things like that to make sure that you can get approvals to then submit relevant sort of quotations to the customer. So that's that. And then I guess the other thing is there can sometimes be a little bit of infighting. So the way that the structures in a lot of organizations work is that you have kind of an overarching team, and then you'd have multiple specialist lines underneath. Now, the customer wants to deal with SAP or another, but actually underneath there is loads of different things that are going on. So everyone's vying for the same purchase. So it's about coordinating that as much as possible, making sure that your product is perhaps in the bill of materials, making sure that your value is maintained, that you're not being negotiated down and you're not losing the margin, because ultimately every AE may be working on this, and you may have 5 or 6 on one of these strategic deals, and they all want their piece of the pie. So that's where it becomes really interesting. That's where it becomes a little bit political, and yeah, it's a careful process to manage that. So we have to show value to the customer, but we also have to show value internally in terms of what that solution's bringing.
Now we're getting onto the juicy stuff. I like it.
Yes, yes, it's
Gonna
fun.
go straight. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it can be fun sometimes. There can be some heated exchanges.
I can imagine. So I'm going to go to the infighting bit in a minute, but I'm just going to ask a question before that. You talked about getting an A team on board, and I'm trying to visualize what that means and what the process looks like, because I'm guessing you need pre-sales people, you need technical people, you got finance, you got lots of different people, and I guess like anything, there's a best and a worst in every team, isn't there? That's just the nature of human beings. So what you're talking about there is actually, if I'm going to get a pre-sales engineer, if I'm going to get whatever it is, and I've got 4 of them in the team, maybe 40 of them in the team, I need one of these people because of the size of the deal. So you're going in and trying to request people you've worked really well with
Exactly.
before, who you know and experience. Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Absolutely right. And they all have different managers, so you need to know each of the different ones. There might be engineers, there might be architects, there's business value advisors, there's commercial leads. So you need to know each and every single one of them, and be able to kind of navigate that. And you're absolutely right. There's some amazing people at SAP, like really, really awesome. And you get to know the people that work well with you, and are maybe a specialist in a particular topic. So that's why it's important to have those on board. You know how they work. They've obviously got their own times and things to manage. So to have them working collaboratively is hugely important. So you have to go to each of those managers, you have to go to each of those individuals, understand what if they've got any holidays. It just becomes like you do become a bit of a PA, to be honest, as well.
Yeah. I'm keen to understand how somebody new in your role that you're in now, for example, would get through that. So you've got relationships, you know people, you've got previous deals you've worked on where you've gone, that person let me down, or that person did a great job. So you've kind of done some of the qualification filtering over that time. No doubt you got your faves. I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
But if you're new in, how on earth do you navigate that?
I think you have to be visible. I think that's the number one rule, really. The one thing I'd say is that everyone is really welcoming. Everyone understands that the end customer is the ultimate goal, and if you're looking to help them, then great. So everyone's kind of sales focused, if you like. But normally you'd lean on people. So SAP have a really good buddy scheme. So you join and you get assigned to a buddy who helps you with these initial introductions. And as I say, then SAP kind of open the doors for you, but you have to be proactive. You have to go and reach out to relevant people. You have to ask other people that are quite forthcoming with information for who's the best in this, who's the best in that, who should I be speaking to. So I think the first 90 days is really internal focus when you join a company like SAP. I think it's hugely important to get your face out there, show you're keen, show you're proactive, and doors will open.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, infighting. Come on, let's get into it. Horror stories. There must be some really good. It doesn't have to be you and what you've been through, but maybe some of your colleagues in one of the roles you've been in, or maybe not even SAP, or maybe it's secondhand stories. But I'd just love to hear some of the stuff that you've seen, heard, whatever.
I think just it's not me personally, and not in SAP, but you see some of the politics when it comes down to kind of emails and things being shared. There's language gets risen up in terms of he's effing this, effing that. He hasn't done anything to contribute to the deal. People get really kind of thrown under the bus a little bit, and because they're trying to justify their part of the deal being recognised. So it can get really heated, both in terms of calls, emails, and you've got to imagine every sales leader is also forecasting that portion of the revenue. So it gets really heated, and I've seen some interesting exchanges down the pubs and things like that as well.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, but that level of we've labeled it as infighting, whatever you want to call it. There's an element of positivity in there, isn't there? That people care, that people want to be successful and want to get it right. I guess it's finding the line between this being really something I care about, we're passionate, and therefore we're going to do the best we can, and it being disruptive, negative.
Yeah, you do wonder if it's maybe a positive thing for some organisations that there's internal competition. So I think it is important, and generally most companies get it along the line. I think it's normally quite clear, but you get those kind of grey areas where it starts to become heated, and there's a lot of backhanded conversations that happen. Say, oh, I'll sort you out this time if you sort me out here, and things like that as well. But the best people will remain customer focused. So what's right for the customer is what we should be selling, what we should putting it into the bill of materials.
Well, earlier you mentioned about, your account director, they've got the skin in the game financially, so they're accountable for the deal. When the deal comes over, they get a paycheck out of it. If it doesn't come over, they
Yeah.
don't. What's everybody else got in it? Why would they go and bend over backwards to make this deal come true for you?
Yeah, so sales typically are commission based as well as a base salary, and then the rest of the organization is bonus based. So that would be dependent on your role. So the customer success team is renewal percentage. Like the pre-sales engineers, they've got a joint pot, so they would have to contribute to X million of revenue throughout the financial year, and then they'll get their bonus as well. So it's not hard and fast like quota versus commission, but it is kind of bonus orientated as well. So they've got a vested interest, but it's not as like strict one to one as it is in sales.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So everybody has got a reward if it goes well. They've got a
Yeah,
reason beyond just doing their job.
yeah, pretty much everyone is bonus orientated. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was trying to envisage why, if you're all the way, if one of those 50 people and you're number 47 in the important list in terms of whether this deal does or doesn't happen, what
Exactly.
motivates that person to go above and beyond? And
Yeah.
that's it. They've got their own individual
I,
incentives.
I have started seeing other companies give you a one-to-one. So you'd have a sales rep and then you'd have a like a pre-sales engineer or something like that, and they'd be targeted almost similar. So they'd have their own number. So that's it's kind of an interesting mix. But yeah, then you're very much relying. Then you really are a Batman and Robin
Yeah,
double act.
which is fine if it works, right?
Yeah,
But if you
yeah,
butt heads or it doesn't work or you work in different ways, that can open up new challenges.
exactly. If you get to Q3 and nothing's happening, then there can be a bit of infighting, blaming each other potentially again.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Oh, I'm loving this. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
It's an amazing world. Like there is so many people to go and meet, and everyone's got a different story. Everyone adds a bit value in different ways and things like that. I guess frustrating, like in all organizations, sometimes you feel, are people pulling their weight? I've got the most vested interest in something. I really need everyone to come in and do this. Maybe things are a little bit late or not to the same kind of standard that you're after. So that's where it gets a bit tough. We have to be like, come on, we need this. We need to bring your best and stuff. So
Yeah. How many of the this is an interesting question. I'm trying to explore how much you have to play by the rules and how much you can bend the rules, I guess, because one of the things I often see of experience within enterprise is that there's so much red tape, there's so many things in the way,
yeah,
there's so much process, and if you actually played by the rules that are on paper all the time, it would take forever to get anything done, and you'd never get ahead. So there is an element that you've got to break that sometimes. You've got to shortcut. You've got to go over someone's head. You've got to not follow a process. You've got to stick your neck out and put your neck on the line, I suppose. Is that
yeah.
is that true? Is that fair?
Absolutely. When it comes to kind of the commercial and legalities and things like that, it's really strict because you'd be SAP would be exposed or other big companies would be exposed. But there are loads of other processes, whether it be kind of CRM updates, sharing kind of initial pricing and things like that, where you would tend to just have a bit more of a we need to move a bit faster, we need to be quicker. Our competitors are doing it really quickly, so we would go and kind of ask for forgiveness rather than rather than do that first, and that is a challenge. We are basically moving SAP and others are moving to the cloud, but you've got these kind of best of breed pure SaaS players that have done this kind of in the startup world that are able to be so agile, so quick and move so quickly that you kind of have to do it to keep up. You can't be waiting 2 weeks for a quote to be officially approved before
Yeah.
you can share that pricing. So there has to be an understanding that if we don't move fast or if we don't break the process, then we're going to be behind.
And that speed of movement, oh God, geez, that would frustrate me. That must be one of the hardest bits to accept selling in an enterprise environment.
It's one of the hardest things to do. So when I joined, I was like, this is so slow. It's not moving fast enough. And then you try to make suggestions, you try and look for workarounds, but then you come to the realization that you're too small to break a process for 100,000 people. So you just have to learn to live with it. And that's again where the network comes in. You have people that know how to do things quickly, even right the way down to kind of support engineers in IT, for example, that can help you build and navigate a quote and look at the percentage discounts and all of that kind of stuff. Just helps you take time out, like give you time back in your day. It's hugely important.
Look, really, really interesting. We're coming to the end of the conversation, but I've loved hearing about it because I've never been in it, and you validated why I've never been in it for starters. So thank you for that. No enterprise for me, that's for sure. But you know what? I can see why, if you've got that patience, if you're good at that stakeholder management, if you're good at building those relationships, why, ultimately there's a lot of money to be made. There's a lot of success, a lot of credibility in being in an organization like that. But you know what? It's not for the faint-hearted, is it?
No, it's not. But I think the one thing is, like, as I mentioned, SAP is a global company. You've got loads of opportunities and others in terms of going internationally, career progression, loads of different routes. But you're also having conversations right at the top of the chain. So you are dealing with CIOs, CFOs, e-commerce directors, chief digital officers, all of those people, and you're having executive level conversations. It was something I quite liked in my early recruitment days, that you could go and have a conversation with the top people and really get to that level. You certainly get that at a large enterprise organization. You are dealing on truly transformational stuff. So it's really exciting. It is, when you get invested in it, if you're happy to play the long game, you learn an awful lot about kind of what people are like, what customers are like, the pain things go for, and ultimately, if you get it right, the rewards are awesome.
And I'm guessing, let's be clear on something. There is no organization without politics in it.
No.
It just looks different in an SME or mid-market. It's still there though. It's just a different behavior set.
Exactly, and it might just be slightly bigger and kind of more of it. And but good people are you find wherever you go. I think you know how to manage it, and I don't know, it's something about it's quite interesting. I do like watching how people react, and it can be quite funny sometimes, to be fair.
You like the challenge as well, don't
Yeah,
you,
I do.
Chris?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like it. I like to see how we get on.
Well, look, Chris, we always like to give our guests a chance to I guess, just say who can they help, who could and should be talking to you and to SAP, and how can they get in touch as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone is considering a role in SAP or any of other large organizations, then more than happy to catch up on LinkedIn, or I'll share my details with Owen, so you can get in contact as well. It is a great career path. I've learned a lot. I think it's something that is everyone should try and do at some point in their career, because you do see how the other half lives. So yeah, feel free to get in contact if you're considering it, or if you're just wanted to have a chat about anything we've discussed today.
Brilliant. Chris, thank you ever so much. I've genuinely enjoyed this conversation. I've
Awesome.
smiled all the way through because I'm just visiting it, but actually learned some great stuff as well. So thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Owen.
Thank you.
Cheers.